Welcome back to the Not Just Leadership podcast. I'm your host, Dominic de Moura McCarthy. Thanks for joining us for another episode. Really excited for today's episode. It's the first time we're recording online, and I'm joined by a really incredible guest, Robbie Gaspar. Robbie, can you please introduce yourself to the listeners and share a little bit about your really interesting background and what you do?
Thanks, Dom, and thanks for having me today. Robbie Gaspar. I was Australia's first professional footballer to play in Indonesia. I was there for around 8 years, but I had a 14-year professional football career, which went to Europe, the old Australian National Soccer League. And then I had 10 years in Asia, and following that, I've sort of been working in sports diplomacy, using football, more, as a means to develop those closer people-to-people links between Australia and, Indonesia, but also India, Malaysia, and Singapore. And also I'm sort of doing a little bit of work for the World Players Association called FIFPro. So I'm currently now in Indonesia doing some capacity building work with their Players Association. It's perfect timing around the World Cup as well.
Yeah, wonderful. You've got a really interesting background going from that professional sporting career into essentially what you call sports diplomacy. Before we get into a few questions, can you just explain a little bit for people who aren't aware what sports diplomacy is? Like, how would you describe that in simple terms?
Yeah, sort of just using football or sport as a means to develop closer people-to-people links between, nations as well. Football has sport has a great ability to really break down barriers. It doesn't discriminate. And it's such a great opportunity to just sort of develop those closer people-to-people links, which are so important in developing closer relations between our nearest neighbours.
Yeah, of course. And you've built a really successful football career, Robbie, here in Australia and also there in Indonesia. And you've developed a real love and connection for Indonesia through the language that you've learnt to speak fluently, the culture, and ultimately sport through football. So I guess looking back on your playing career, what's been the most valuable tool or thing from your playing career that you've been able to now take into your work in sports diplomacy? I guess obviously the professional side of it probably gives you a really good understanding of the ecosystem, but what has that ultimately provided for you going into this more international relations focused career?
Learning the language, like I was fortunate enough to learn Indonesian while I was here in Indonesia, and how do you say it? It's given me the ability, like when I'm in Indonesia doing work, like as I am today, over the next few days, the opportunity to really understand what Indonesia is like, the culture. Develop that, like language literacy helps you develop that cultural competency, and that Indonesia literacy and why things happen in certain ways. You get to really develop a sort of a deeper understanding of the nation, but also through sport, I think we develop, how do you say it, leadership skills, soft leadership skills as well. And how do you say it, how to work in teams, how to work, but also on your own, how to we're working with so many different nationalities as well and understanding those nationalities as well. And how do you say it? There's a lot of things you learn along the way in football as well, and you can translate into sort of work post football. And that's also another thing I'm really passionate about is also, players transitioning out of the game and assisting them with that transition as well.
Yeah, and Australia and Indonesia do share a really, special and close relationship geographically, diplomatically, economically, um, uh, through international education as well and migration. So, what have you, in your experiences, what have you seen that football can do that other forms of diplomacy maybe can't?
So for me, like football it breaks down sort of barriers. It's that we call it soft, but I actually call it smart diplomacy. The sort of an Australian government DFAT have sort of recognised this by bringing out a specific sports diplomacy strategy. Now it's called Sports Diplomacy 2032. So there's been a few iterations as well. And how do you say it? It gives that ability to sort of, I think football it's the number one sport here in Indonesia, but also it's a massive sport in Australia, as we can see now with the World Cup starting as well, like sort of today. It gives you that ability to really break down barriers and sort of, we have that same common, sort of passion, or that's that same common language as well of sport. And how do you say, through football, I've been able to meet so many amazing people and develop close relations because of, my ability, because I've been able to play football. So I think it's just another tool we can use to develop closer people-to-people links with our nearest neighbours and also, other countries around the world as well, because we do sport really, really well in Australia.
That's a good point. Yeah, and I guess with the FIFA World Cup just, kicking off, it's an event that really galvanizes, everyone's energy and attention around the world, billions of people watching it. Um, what does the World Cup mean to you? Because you've, played this sport at the highest level. It must be such a special time when the World Cup comes around every 4 years. And what do you think is kind of its role in bringing people together, or just really refocusing our attention on, hey, like, at the heart of it, we're all human. We all have this love and passion for this sport. But what does the World Cup mean for you, Robbie?
Oh, World Cup means sort of everything, like Australia being there right now, I've been playing, like sort of also my parents are Croatian as well, Croatia playing there as well, so I'm going for Australia, but my second country to following is Croatia. It just means everything. It's that 4 years you wait for. And then when it comes, you're sort of not getting much sleep at all. You're watching all those games. Now we have 48 teams and there's so many games. And how do you say it? It's the pinnacle, it's not something I was never lucky enough to play in. But like I've got friends that have played in, and they said it's the best feeling ever. It's that what you strive for to be able to play in. But football brings 48 nations now together. Not together. It's a one-to-one. The World Cup now 3 countries.
Yeah.
For like a month of games as well. And for me, it's about it's all about. It's really not what happens on the field. It's also what happens off the field. And I'm here in Indonesia right now, and everywhere I go, there's flags up. There's people wearing jerseys. I was at a shopping center yesterday, and I had like this massive futsal field in the middle of the shopping center and had all the sort of the Adidas jerseys as well as like a bit of an Adidas thing. But it's just an opportunity to bring people together and, something it's, how do you say, it's like a happy thing, like,
Yeah.
all right, you win or lose, you draw, but end of the day, it's how you participate, how you have fun. It's about the relationships you build. And that's what sport's so good at, developing those relationships. And, for me, the World Cup is everything. And hopefully Australia can go far and hopefully go all the way.
Yeah, well, they, really set the bar high at the last tournament, going to the round of 16, and we're scoring against Argentina late there in the second half. Um, Myself, I guess living in Brazil, I was actually living in Brazil at the last World Cup. I had just gotten married to my Brazilian wife, and it's just phenomenal how it had just transforms the country for a few weeks. Um, on day games, the whole city's pretty much shut down because people are, gathering at each other's homes or in pubs or, at public watch sites. And it's just incredible to see how one event can really just, bring together the whole nation. And I guess the World Cup is probably another one of those tools in sports diplomacy that you can use because it's such a big audience. There's so much attention on it. What do you think, like those big major sporting events like the World Cup? What do you think that's useful for in terms of driving your kind of agenda in the sports diplomacy area?
I think because I'm so passionate at football, just showing how big football is to people sort of, like in Australia and understanding that it's the global game that every country sort of around the world wants to become world champions. And, football, it's just such a big game. And, I'm here in Indonesia and, last night Indonesia played Australia and, had a really good win in the Piala AFF, which is the AFF Suzuki Cup. We won 1-0, like sort of in the semi-finals. Now the team's going into the final. This is an under-19s tournament bit, but it also had over
Mm.
25,000 people there watching the game. So for me, like football, it's, there's such a great opportunities for us to develop those relationships, develop that cultural competency, that deeper understanding of how countries work, and use that as a tool to really to how do you say it, develop closer people to people links. And we've got the Olympics coming up in 2032. We've had the Women's World Cup, which is such a great success. The attendances were huge. We've had recently the Asian Cup in Australia as well, only a few months ago as well. So
Yeah.
all these sporting events, like really give us an opportunity to really push, Australia's probably interest, but also portray Australia in such a really good light and
Mm.
also encourage tourists to be able to come to Australia as well and sort of experience our great country. So I think there's so many opportunities there in sport, and also, football and other sports as well to really sort of, like show how great Australia is and, like, and sort of, like develop those closer people to people links.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of people listening in might be young leaders or emerging professionals. And what do you think? I guess football and sport is probably it's a great way to actually develop your leadership skills, really, because if you take on a captaincy role, or even if you're a team player, you've got your position that you've been given, and you've got to lead in that role. Um, what do you think? um, leadership can, how do how do you think sport and football can be used for young people to create leadership opportunities and develop that leadership experience?
It's, as you're talking about, it's not just the captain on the field as well. As you've got, say, for example, I use football, you've got 11 players, you've also got the substitutes, you've also got the coaches, you've got the support staff. So everybody plays their role. And if you do your role well, and like then hopefully the team will win. I say you never lose. You always win or you learn. But
Mm.
also, how do you say it? When you're on the field as well, you also got to look up. You also make sure you got to do the small things off the park. Make sure that you're sort of, also contributing team on the park as well. So when you're a captain as well, you got the responsibility as well when you're the leader, looking after your whole teammates, making sure everybody's okay. What are you doing off the field? Are you speaking to your teammates? Are you sort of, when you're on the field, are you leading by example? Like, are you coming to training first? Are you at work first? Or are you making sure everyone else is okay? And stuff like that. Are you setting an example? Are you setting the bar high? When I was captain here in Indonesia, I made sure I sort of, like I was here on time, I set really good standards so people could follow. Younger people could see what I was doing as well so they can follow those standards as well. So I think, you can take a lot of great leadership skills out of sport as well. It's working hard, discipline, resilience, working in teams. So, sport is such a great way to develop your leadership skills as well.
Yeah, you touched on a little bit there, some of the qualities. Can you just expand, like, I guess both inside sport and outside sport, you've got, your work in business and international diplomacy. What qualities do you think really are essential for an effective leader, both on and off the field?
Sort of probably, like sort of in business as well, it's understanding, like when I'm sort of doing business in Indonesia or in Asia, having that cultural competency, like sort of understanding that sometimes, the way people do business overseas is different to the way we do business, in Australia. So that's what I've learned from playing sport, sort of in Asia as well. So, things happen differently, like it's, there's no right or wrong as well, like, and how do you say, culturally, there's different things as well, but you sort of learn that as you go along when you're working, sort of in business overseas and sort of through football in sort of what I was learning in leadership as well was that, you got to really lead by example. That's a really big thing, also you talk the talk and you walk the walk as well, which is big as well. And also making sure you're there for your teammates as well. Putting the team first. It's not about you, it's about your team, making sure you're leading constantly, it's having those standards high as well. And how do you say it? And also having sort of understanding and, like of people and, they have things also going on in their lives as well that sometimes things aren't always going to go to plan. And that's where you probably need to step up and sort of, like understand and sort of work with those people to develop those sort of skills as well. Because you also want, how do you say it, succession plans as well for people in leadership as well. So,
Yeah, great. Yeah, really practical examples there. I wanted to think, kind of cast your mind, Robbie, into a sports diplomacy initiative that you would really like to put in place. If there wasn't any kind of funding or financial limits, if there wasn't any geographical, logistical issues, what would be one program that, like, you as Robbie Gaspar would like to implement? It could be across countries, could be in one specific country. If the financial side is often the challenge for these things, if that wasn't a challenge, what would it be? What would it look like, and why?
well, actually, we actually did one last year. So I was actually bringing, how do you say it, the Western Sydney Wanderers up to Indonesia to play my old football club, Persib Bandung,
Nice.
but now we sort of, brought Western Sydney Wanderers. They came up, they trained in Bandung, they engaged with the community, and then they played a game on a Saturday, and then they sort of went home on a Sunday. My dream is now, can we bring Persib, my old football club, to Australia to experience that what we sort of got to experience up in Indonesia. That's my dream as well,
Yeah.
to bring more Indonesian teams or more Asian teams to Australia to really experience how great Australia is and to really sort of promote that and to really engage with our communities as well, like sort of the diaspora. Is it, Indonesia? Is it Malaysia? Is it India? Is it all these countries that are sort of, like sort of so big and they love their football? Bring them to Australia, hopefully to Perth, I'm from Perth as well, to play games there and just to really sort of show how great, like our country is and just to really sort of develop those relationships. When we do bring the teams over, do we bring people from government as well? Do we bring people over from business? So we just get a really good sort of a program when we're here. Do we do business functions? Do we do government functions? Do all this other sort of stuff? And, like this is something I'm working towards. or West as well to be able to do on a regular basis? And then is it youth tournaments as well? And also, is it women's tournaments as well? So stuff like that, I'd love to be able to do on a regular basis. I see just the opportunities are so big as well. And I'm just sort of, really passionate about using football. Then can we also maybe sort of tag other sports onto it as well?
Mm.
I think there's so much great opportunity there as well to do this sort of stuff. And, we do sport really well. So, and it's something I'm really passionate about, but also not just the sport. Can we do the government stuff? Can we do the business stuff? Can we do the youth leadership programs as well alongside it as well? So, there's all these little bits and pieces that we can do. We can tag on alongside, and sport would just be the bridge or the glue that brings everybody together, or the magnet. And then we can sort of do all this other stuff alongside it.
Yeah, and I feel like we're just really scratching the surface of some of these programs, both there in Asia and also thinking across into the Pacific as well. There's a lot of exciting footballers coming up and through the ranks. You've got specific events like the Pacific Games, their own kind of mini regional Olympics that happens every 4 years, and then every 2 years in between that, they have the mini Pacific Games. And Australia always sends like a regional delegation of athletes there. And likewise, there's some other programs where different athletes are coming to Australia. Thinking of, for example, the Indigenous cricket competition that was recently on, where Papua New Guinea played. So you can see that this idea that you're pitching, Robbie, is really applicable across the whole, let's say, Indo-Pacific, as the Australia government kind of refers to it. And I feel like we're really just scratching the surface about what can be done. And I think you're the right person to lead it. So World Cup's just started. Got a big month ahead. As you mentioned, a lot of late nights, early mornings, get across all the games. Putting the bias aside, what's your predictions?
Oh, you can't really go
Okay,
past, I think, the France's.
can't put the bias aside. Australia's for the win.
Yeah, I've sort of got to be realistic as well. Like it's what people are. It's actually going to be a really long World Cup. You got 48 teams now, and you've got, instead of now going to the round of 16, you're going to the round of 32. So you get your 32, your 16, your 8, your 4, and then your final. So you've got to probably win 5 games on the bounce, and also you got your 3 group games. So that's
Yeah.
8 games you've got to do really well in, so where you don't slip up. So probably sort of, you see the Frances, the Spains, Brazil will do really well as well. I think also Argentina. I don't think, sort of any of the host countries will do well, like a Canada or USA or Mexico, I think maybe a Mexico might sort of, like sort of being based at home. And I don't think America's got the quality, but I just think, the usual, the Frances, the Spains, the Brazils, the Argentinas. I think also, potentially maybe even a Germany or even a Holland might surprise a few people.
Yeah.
I think England as well, with Harry Kane being on fire as well, scoring. I think you need someone who's going to score you these 5 to 7 goals in a tournament. And I think with his form currently at Bayern Munich was phenomenal this year. I think they
Yeah,
maybe got it as well.
Yeah, it's such a exciting game because there's a lot of players that are really peaking. You have a lot of those senior players who it's, going to be their last World Cup. Definitely for Messi, for Ronaldo, probably for Neymar as well. He's, in his mid-30s, and other players, Modric from Croatia as well. Yeah, he'll
40.
be wow, there you go. So it's like, feels like a little bit of the end of an era, but there's definitely those up and coming players as well. And, a lot of the teams are really, the level's really lifting, like, and the across the board, the quality is really across all teams. There's quality players and quality attacks in all teams, which is really exciting. I think the game is very, it's a very exciting game to watch in the modern age. And Australia's, back to back qualifying for World Cup. It's been such a incredible journey following. I'm in my mid-20s, so I haven't, been able to follow the Socceroos for as long as other Australian viewers. But just seeing the development of the team over the past, decade or so has been really exciting, and seeing the Australian community now get behind it in huge numbers. I mean, traditionally they've always had really good viewership and a good following. But as you mentioned, it's the world game, and it's a game that when you travel internationally, everyone, most countries or people follow football or have some connection to the game. So it's really, to bring it into perspective for Australia, is really great and exciting, and to have the public viewing parties that they're having at different locations across the country, that really just brings the community together in a time where it's there's a lot of negative news, there's a lot happening, so it's nice just to have a month of enjoyment and competition and high energy.
That's what sport does. It brings people together and sort of brings people, like sort of all nationalities. It doesn't discriminate. And how do you say, it doesn't matter who you are or where you're from. Football has this ability, great ability, or sport to bring people together and, put a smile on people's faces as well. And it doesn't matter what happens on the field. It's sort of what happens the field, those relationships you develop as well. And, I also forgot to mention Japan, I think might be a really good sort of, bit of a dark horse as well in the tournament as well. And how do you say it? I think they might go well as well. So just something that, they're doing their football really well. So that's
Mm.
another opportunity for us, another country for us to engage with.
Yeah,
In the,
absolutely.
and how do you say it? Yeah, there'll be a dark horse, I think, as well.
Yeah, definitely. There always is. Well, Robbie, just one final question to wrap things up, I guess. Is there any advice you'd like to give to people listening who want to get into this, this cross between sport and leadership, international engagement? What's kind of your advice you could pass on to any listeners?
Yeah, like hey, just have a go. It takes a little bit of time as well, but if you're passionate about something and you got it, and you really want to do it, like just sort of just put the time and effort in, and the results will follow as well. And when it comes to leadership as well, and don't be afraid to stand up and make mistakes. And I always say we either win or we learn. And don't be afraid to speak to people that are in leadership positions and ask them what do they do, what do they do well, and what have they learned along the way as well, because I think we learn a lot from others as well and how other people lead, and then you develop your own leadership style as well. And because there's no probably, sort of, like you sort of your own individual person, and I think you're going to develop your own leadership style. And yeah, how do you say it? And don't be afraid to sort of, have a go as well and make mistakes and learn from them.
Yeah, wonderful advice. Well, Robbie, it's been a real pleasure having you on, and thanks for jumping on the invitation. World Cup, so it's a lot going on. I know you're busy. It's very early morning there in Indonesia, so appreciate you taking the time, Robbie, and really love your work, and it's really inspiring to see what you're doing. So yeah, thank you once again.
Thanks, Dom. Keep up the great work. And yeah, thanks again. And hopefully, like sort of we have a great World Cup.
Yep, go the Aussies, go to Socceroos, and Brazil.